Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of John von Neumann today.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most influential mathematicians of the 20th century.
And we've got some fascinating excerpts from Benjamín Labatut's novel, The MANIAC, to guide us.
Yeah, the MANIAC blends fact and fiction to give us a very unique perspective on his life and the impact of his work.
It's not your typical biography.
No, not at all.
So, to set the stage,
Okay.
von Neumann was a child prodigy.
Oh, absolutely.
With an incredible ability for calculation from a young age.
It's unbelievable.
And there's this really interesting story about him when he was only 4 years old.
Okay.
He saw his mother
Yeah.
kind of lost in thought, and he asked her, "Mommy, what are you calculating?"
Wow, what a question for a 4-year-old. Can you imagine?
It's almost unbelievable.
It really highlights his unique mind.
It does.
This drive to understand the world through numbers.
Yeah, and it really sets the stage for a life that was anything but ordinary.
It makes you wonder how a mind like that develops at such a young age.
Right. What were the influences?
Well, his upbringing in Budapest definitely played a role.
Tell me about that.
His father, Max von Neumann, was a successful banker,
Okay.
but he was also fascinated by technology,
Interesting.
almost like a 20th century venture capitalist,
Oh, I see.
investing in the latest gadgets and bringing them home.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Well, one of these gadgets was a jacquard loom.
A jacquard loom. What's that?
Well, it's this fascinating machine that uses punched cards to create patterns in textiles.
So, essentially a very early form of programmable machinery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where we see that early spark of fascination with computation in young von Neumann.
Wow. So he was exposed to this kind of thinking from a really young age.
Oh yeah, he was captivated by this loom. He spent hours taking it apart and putting it back together with his brother.
It's like he was trying to understand the magic behind it.
Exactly. Deciphering the logic of those punch cards.
Right. That's incredible. And this fascination with computation would become a major theme throughout his life.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a thread that runs through all of his work.
And this wasn't just a passing interest. Von Neumann also had this incredible intellectual journey.
He was fluent in multiple languages
Wow.
and had a deep understanding of mathematics from a very young age.
But his first wife, Mariette Kövesi, paints a picture of a man whose personality changed over time.
Yeah, especially after they moved to America.
What did she say?
Well, she felt he became more distant, more absorbed in his work.
It's interesting.
Like his intellect came at a cost,
Mm-hmm.
affecting his personal relationships.
And she also talked about the impact of their shared Jewish heritage
Yeah.
and the growing threat of anti-Semitism in Europe during the 1930s.
She recounted a chilling experience they had in Berlin.
Oh, really?
As the Nazi Party was gaining power,
Okay.
they were having lunch at this luxurious restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
a place frequented by high-ranking Nazi officials. And von Neumann, seemingly oblivious to the danger,
I see.
was completely focused on their discussion about escaping Europe.
It's like he was so focused on his ideas
Because,
that the real world faded away.
exactly.
And that intense focus would become even more apparent
Yeah.
as he entered the world of mathematics, specifically during a period known as the Foundational Crisis.
Oh yes, the foundational crisis.
What was that all about?
Well, it was a time when mathematicians were really grappling with some fundamental questions
Like what?
about the consistency and completeness of their discipline.
So they were questioning the very foundations of math itself.
Absolutely. Imagine questioning the very bedrock of your field,
That's incredible.
wondering if it all actually made sense.
It must have been a very unsettling time for mathematicians.
Oh, it absolutely was.
And who were the key figures in all of this?
Well, Kurt Gödel was a central figure.
Okay, what did he do?
His incompleteness theorems prove that there are inherent limitations to any formal system of logic.
So you're saying there are things in math that we can't prove?
Exactly. It was a revolutionary idea.
That's mind-blowing. How do you even wrap your head around that?
Well, think of it like a dictionary that tries to define every word,
Okay,
but it also needs to define the word dictionary itself.
I see.
You end up stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
Gödel showed that math has similar limitations.
Hmm.
You can't use math to prove that math is flawless.
So there will always be true statements that you can't prove within the system itself.
Precisely. It's like math itself has a blind spot.
That's fascinating.
And von Neumann was deeply engaged in trying to grapple with these implications.
So he took Gödel's ideas and ran with them.
Absolutely. He built upon those findings, further demonstrating that even the consistency of mathematics is ultimately unprovable.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is, isn't it?
So we have this brilliant mind,
Yeah.
capable of incredible calculation and abstract thought, grappling with the very foundations of math,
Right.
questioning the limits of what we can know and prove.
Yeah. And then World War II breaks out.
Oh, right.
And von Neumann, with his unique skill set, is pulled into the war effort.
It was a turning point for him.
And he becomes a key figure in the Manhattan Project.
It's fascinating how this man, who was grappling with these abstract mathematical concepts,
Right.
found himself at the forefront of one of the most significant technological developments in human history.
The atomic bomb.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, it's like something out of a movie.
The brilliant mathematician.
Right.
Drawn into this world of top-secret government projects.
It's incredible. But what's really interesting is that even in the midst of all the urgency and secrecy, his fascination with computation never waned.
It's like this parallel track running through his life
Exactly.
while he's working on the bomb.
Yeah.
He's also thinking about these bigger questions about computation.
He was deeply involved in the complex calculations for the bomb's design.
Right.
But at the same time,
He was fascinated by the women working as human computers at Los Alamos.
human computers.
Yes, they were performing these incredibly tedious
Yeah.
and complex calculations
Wow.
by hand.
So he's seeing the power of computation,
But-
but also its limitations.
Exactly. And that's where his vision for electronic computers takes shape.
He realized that machines could do this work
Right.
much more efficiently
And accurately.
than humans.
Yeah, it's like he had this dual vision,
Wow.
understanding the destructive potential of the atomic age,
Mhm.
but also laying the groundwork for the digital age.
It's like these two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely.
But it also raises some really important questions.
Like what?
Was he aware of the potential consequences
Hmm.
of automating these calculations?
Of making this power more readily available.
Yeah,
That's a question that's still debated today.
it's a really important one.
It is. But what's clear is that his work on the Manhattan Project
Yeah.
had a profound impact on his thinking.
It shaped his view of computation.
It did.
So the war ends.
Yes.
The world enters the atomic age.
Right.
And von Neumann turns his attention fully to computers.
To building the machines that will define the future.
And it all begins with the ENIAC,
The electronic numerical integrator and computer
developed at the University of Pennsylvania.
during the war.
Right. Now, the ENIAC was a marvel of technology for its time,
It was capable of performing calculations at incredible speeds.
but it was essentially a giant calculator.
It was, and
Yeah.
every time you wanted to change the program,
Yeah,
you had to physically rewire the entire machine.
that sounds like a nightmare.
It was a logistical nightmare. And von Neumann, with his understanding of math and computation,
Right.
immediately recognized the limitations of this approach.
He envisioned something different,
He did.
a stored program computer.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Well, instead of rewiring the machine for every new program,
Okay.
von Neumann's idea was to store the instructions.
The program itself,
Yes, in the computer's memory.
along with the data.
Right.
So you could change the program
Yes.
without physically altering the hardware.
It's a brilliant idea.
It's like the difference between having to rebuild your car
Okay.
every time you want to take a different route
Yeah,
versus just plugging a new address into your GPS.
that's a great analogy. And that's why von Neumann's concept
Mhm.
of the stored program computer
Yes.
was so groundbreaking.
It's the foundation of modern computing,
It is.
the architecture that powers everything we use today.
Absolutely.
And this revolutionary idea led to the creation of the MANIAC
The mathematical analyzer, numerical integrator, and computer.
at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton.
Yes, the MANIAC.
Tell me about the MANIAC.
Well, it was based on Alan Turing's concept of a universal computer.
Okay.
And it had just 5 key components.
Okay.
Input, output, memory, the logic and arithmetic unit,
Okay.
and the control unit, which is essentially the CPU.
Wow, that's amazingly simple,
It is, isn't it?
considering what it could do.
And it's essentially the same basic architecture
Yeah.
that we use in computers today.
It's incredible how far ahead of his time he was.
It really is. But it's also fascinating to think about the challenges
Okay.
they faced building this machine in the early 1950s.
What kinds of challenges?
Well, they were using war surplus parts,
Oh, wow.
vacuum tubes that burned out constantly.
Really?
And the memory was so fragile
Mm-hmm.
that static electricity could wipe it clean.
So a stray spark could erase an entire program.
Absolutely.
That's both incredible and terrifying.
It does make you appreciate the robustness of modern technology.
It does.
But those early pioneers of computing
Yeah.
were pushing the boundaries,
They were.
facing challenges that we can barely imagine today.
And it wasn't just technical challenges.
Right.
There was also resistance from some of the mathematicians at the Institute.
Oh yeah, they saw this new technology as an intrusion.
An intrusion.
Yeah, a disruption to the pure world of theoretical mathematics.
It's interesting how revolutionary ideas
It is.
can face pushback from those who feel threatened by change.
It happens all the time.
It's a reminder that progress is rarely a smooth, linear path.
Absolutely.
So the MANIAC is up and running,
Yes.
pushing the boundaries of computation.
Right.
And then this fascinating and somewhat controversial figure enters the scene.
Who was that?
Nils Baricelli,
Oh yes, Baricelli.
a mathematical biologist.
He was a fascinating character, a true maverick.
What was he like?
Well, he was a champion of symbiogenesis,
Symbiogenesis.
the theory that complex life arose through symbiotic relationships
Okay.
between simpler organisms.
I see.
And he believed that this process could be replicated,
Replicating.
even in a digital environment.
So he wanted to use the MANIAC
Yeah.
to simulate the evolution of life.
Exactly.
That's an incredibly ambitious goal.
It was. He would seed the MANIAC's memory with random numbers and then introduce a set of rules to govern their interactions.
So he's essentially creating a digital ecosystem
Precisely.
inside the computer.
Right.
It's fascinating to imagine what was going through his mind.
It is, isn't it?
As he watched these simulations unfold,
He would print out the results on punch cards, creating these lush mathematical landscapes.
it's like he was creating art
It is, in a way,
through algorithms
trying to capture the beauty and complexity of evolution.
in a digital medium.
Exactly.
But did he succeed?
Well, his experiments ultimately failed
Fail.
to achieve the complexity of real life.
Hmm.
The digital organism would evolve for a while,
Okay.
but they would eventually reach a limit,
A limit.
unable to break through to a higher level of complexity.
It's like they hit an evolutionary dead end.
In a way, yes.
Mhm.
And it's here that things get a little mysterious.
Mysterious. How so?
Well, there are hints of a conflict between Baricelli and von Neumann.
A conflict.
They seemingly never acknowledged each other's work.
Hmm.
And Baricelli believed that his research was deliberately suppressed.
That's interesting. Do we know why?
It's unclear what truly transpired between them.
Hmm.
Perhaps von Neumann saw Baricelli's work as a distraction
A distraction.
from his own vision for computing.
I see.
Or maybe he had deeper concerns about the implications of creating artificial life.
That's a question that still resonates today.
It does, doesn't it?
As we grapple with the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence.
Are we on the verge of creating machines that can truly think like us?
Or is there something fundamentally different
Right.
about human consciousness?
That will always remain out of reach.
It's a question that von Neumann himself wrestled with
He did.
in his later years.
As he shifted his focus from computers
Yeah.
to the study of the human brain.
To the nature of intelligence itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about that shift.
Going from building powerful computers to trying to understand the most complex machine of all.
The human brain. It's like he conquered the digital world and then set his sights on unlocking the secrets of our own minds.
And you know, it's interesting.
What?
This was during the Cold War,
Oh, right.
a time of intense fear about nuclear annihilation.
Right, so do you think that played a role in his thinking?
I think it's possible.
Was he trying to preserve human intelligence?
Maybe, in a way.
A backup plan in case the worst happened.
It's a compelling thought,
It really is.
trying to capture the essence of what makes us human
And maybe even replicate it?
in a form that could survive anything.
It adds a whole new dimension to his work.
It does, doesn't it?
This idea that he was driven by a desire to understand
reserve
the very thing that made us vulnerable.
our intelligence, our consciousness.
Exactly. And this exploration of the human mind led him to some really profound insights.
Like what?
Well, he became convinced that the way the human brain processes information is fundamentally different from how computers operate.
He was fascinated by the brain's parallel processing power,
Right, like he realized there's something special about how we think.
a fluidity and intuition that computers just couldn't replicate.
Exactly. And in his final work, Computing Machines and the Brain,
Yeah.
he really dives into this idea.
What did he say?
He argued that the brain operates on a primordial language.
The primordial language. That sounds almost mystical.
It does, doesn't it?
What did he mean by that?
He believed that this language is what allows for intuition,
Okay.
creativity, those flashes of insight.
The things that defy logical explanation.
Exactly. The language of dreams, of sudden realizations, of making connections that a computer might miss.
So it's not just about processing speed or memory.
No,
It's about something deeper,
something that allows us to make leaps of understanding.
that go beyond the logic of a computer program.
And this leads to a really big question.
What's that?
If we could unlock this primordial language,
Yeah.
could we create artificial intelligence that truly rivals human intelligence?
That's a question that feels more relevant than ever.
It does, especially with all the advances in AI.
We're getting closer and closer to creating machines that can do things we once thought only humans could do.
So von Neumann's question becomes even more crucial.
Are we simply creating tools?
Or are we creating something entirely new?
Something that could challenge our understanding of what it means to be human.
It's a question that takes us beyond science.
Into philosophy, ethics, maybe even spirituality.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of John von Neumann,
Yeah,
it's clear that his legacy is as complex as the man himself.
absolutely.
He was a brilliant mathematician,
The pioneer of computing,
a key figure in the development of the atomic bomb.
and a visionary who explored the very nature of intelligence itself.
And his story leaves us with a profound question.
What is it?
What does it mean to be human in an age of increasingly intelligent machines?
It's a question we all need to think about.
As we navigate this ever-evolving digital age.
And maybe the answers lie somewhere within that primordial language of the brain.
Yeah. The language that von Neumann tried so hard to decipher.
It's a fascinating thought.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of John von Neumann.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring his life and the impact of his work,
A story that continues to resonate today.
reminding us of the power and the peril of human ingenuity.